The next fabric sample we're going to do is fabric sample 2, which is pretty much making a seam. So a seam is something that holds fabric together. So you'll notice maybe if you're wearing a shirt that you'll have some sort of seam in the side just to hold two bits of fabric together. So what you'll need is you'll need two bits of fabric here that are pretty much the same size. You want to line them up so they're pretty much square, both the same size, all lined up. Once you've done that, you're going to sew them. Now, what I'll do, I'll put my camera over here and I'll show you what you're going to do. Now, you're not going to use any lines or anything to help you with this now. You're going to just create a seam, how it would usually be done. Now, there's two types of seams. The first one I'm going to do is a open seam, and the second one I'm going to do is a closed seam. So you have both bits of fabric. For the open seam, I'm going to sew them separately. So I'll have them both here as separate pieces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my sewing machine settings to a zigzag stitch, which is, if you look over here, is pretty much maybe a 4 or a 5 on the width, and just leaving the length to the normal 2.5. You can make it 3 if you want to. Then once I've done that, I'm just going to sew along the edge of one side of the fabric. So I'm going to put that in there, line it up almost to the edge of the fabric. You can see here I've kind of lined up my fabric with that line in between that little kind of ski slope like type thing there, and I'm going to start sewing in a minute. So when I start sewing, like always, I hold my 2 threads and start sewing a bit. Now you might find that your fabric gathers a little bit. Don't worry, just maybe place your fabric so it is further in. So what I'm going to do is just start sewing. Remember to reverse stitch and then keep on sewing along that edge to try and get a good zigzag stitch along the edge of your fabric. Now we're doing this so that it stops your fabric from fraying as much, so that it doesn't come apart. When you're finished, just make sure your needle is up, and you should have something along the lines of a zigzag stitch like that. Now you'll do that to both sides, and then I'll show you what to do next. Now you've done that to both sides, done your zigzag stitch along the edge to stop it from fraying, I'm going to show you what you do next. You lie your pieces of fabric on top of each other so the zigzag sides are together. So you'll see that they're facing each other. Then what you're going to do, you're going to sew your seam. Now this will look similar to what you'll see on the inside of your shirt or something like that to keep it together. They'll have a little overlocked or overcast side, and then they'll have a seam 1.5 centimeters in. Now if you have a look on your sewing machine, 1.5 centimeters out from the needle is that second line there. So we need to line the edge of our fabric up with that line. As you can see, I've now lined the edge of my fabric up with that line. Make sure your fabric is lined up properly. If you need to, you can pin your fabric together. We're then going to straight stitch our seam together. This is for, remember, this is for our open seam. Now you will need to change your sewing width or your needle width to 0 again, and then we're just going to sew a straight line following. Keep making sure that our fabric follows along that 1.25 line there. So no drawn lines anymore. We're just going to do it freehand. So I'll just hold my 2 threads again, stitch a couple, then move backwards to the edge of the fabric. Make sure you go to the edge of the fabric, and then I'm going to keep on stitching. Making sure that your edge of your fabric lines up with that 1.5 line as much as possible. And there we go. Make sure that your needle is up, and then pull out your fabric, and then you'll find that you have a seam all done. Now it's an open seam because when you can flatten it out, you can open that out so it's not so bulky, as you can see. Now we're going to do a closed seam to help you out. Now you do a closed seam on the other side of your fabric, so you've got your open seam and then you've got your closed seam. When I do a closed seam, I always do my straight stitching first, so you can leave your straight stitching as it was from before. I'm just going to line it up with the second line again. So if you remember that, that's 1.25 centimeters out, and just lining up the edge of the fabric with that second line. It goes all the way through, so you can look it up right up there. I'm then going to straight stitch all the way down the fabric. Remember to reverse stitch at the start and the end. Okay, hold the 2 threads again, if I can find them, and then I'm going to straight stitch, reverse, remember to reverse because that's tying a knot, and straight stitching all the way down. Lifting up our needle, making sure everything is all cut off.